Hey guys, this is heyybritny and welcome to my channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Cracker Barrel and all of the changes that they are making to their logo and their stores. So I found out about this change on the news and I saw that the headline was basically that Cracker Barrel changed their location. And at first I didn't really mind it. I understand why people would want to update or make minor tweaks to their brand image. However, I didn't know that they were also changing the inside of the restaurant. And the reason why I'm really excited to talk about this specific topic is because I used to go to Cracker Barrel all the time when I was younger, and I had never gone to Cracker Barrel prior to going on road trips for basketball because I played AAU basketball, which means that we frequently traveled to go to different tournaments. And so I had never eaten at Cracker Barrel. I've always gone there with my teams and all of that stuff, and for the most part we've had great experiences. The food is good. There's a certain vibe when you go to a Cracker Barrel restaurant. It's very southern, it's very down home, it's very also kind of outdated in a good way because you feel like you're going to your grandmother's house or something like that. And so I really did enjoy the food and just the dynamics, and I have positive memories associated with the traditional design of Cracker Barrel. And I also have to add that I consider myself to be a Southern girl. I grew up in the South. I've always lived in smaller cities, and I've also been to smaller towns. So I'm very comfortable with that Southern way of living, to where you're kind of in a more spread out rural type of area, but also you have very kind of like old school and old fashioned ways of doing things. And I think Cracker Barrel taps into that energy and vibe. And being that I basically moved back home to the town that I grew up in, I really like being able to go to the places that I went to when I was younger and see that either things are exactly the same and I can remember all of these different experiences that I've had just from what I visually see, versus going to places that have changed drastically, because that really does have an impact on me because I don't associate those memories that I had when the place looked completely different than what it does now. And so it makes me not want to go there because I'm not able to have that same experience that I had when I was younger. And that's really what I'm trying to tap into, those memories of positive experiences. And when you don't have that connection, you really have to reforge that connection with that new space. And I think if you're someone who doesn't think about restaurants and malls and stores and all of those places that you can physically go into to have an experience, if you don't think about those places as experiences, you may not really care about why this is even trending. But for me, I really do make those sensory associations with different places, with food and all of that stuff. And so I can see why a lot of people are upset about the rebranding for Cracker Barrel. Okay, so the best comment about this change was this comment, and this is a comment that's basically saying, hey, this is like Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter making changes to Hogwarts and basically ruining people's experience of the school. I can't recall all of the changes that she made. She basically made the rules a lot stricter. I think she changed paintings in places like that, and then she had people who were like monitoring everything and spying and reporting back, and so she really just ruined the vibe of Hogwarts. And so when you have somebody who comes in to a organization, a restaurant, a store, whatever it is, and they make these drastic changes, you change the experience for the people working there, but you also change the experience for the people who are coming there for a certain product. And the other comment that I thought was funny was this one, and it was basically saying that eating at Cracker Barrel feels like eating in somebody's attic, which is really funny because it does tap into that old school vibe, that kind of outdated vibe, but it also works for Cracker Barrel because this is what they built their brand identity on. And I actually don't know what Cracker Barrel used to look like probably before maybe 2004, so I don't know if it had a completely different vibe and then it changed into what I know Cracker Barrel to look like. So that is interesting because I'm only thinking right now about how I know of Cracker Barrel, and there could be people who are older than me who remember, hey, Cracker Barrel didn't look like how you're thinking of it. It used to look like this, and I hated it when it changed to what you know it as from 2005 on. And so it obviously matters who you're talking to and how they initially experienced the restaurant, because if they have a completely different experience, they're gonna say, hey, well, this change isn't so bad because I went through a similar change with that restaurant and basically had to reform those associations so that I could enjoy and feel comfortable going to the restaurant again once you get used to that initial shock. And then on the other hand, you have people who have never been to Cracker Barrel, and this is going to be their first experience with Cracker Barrel, the remodel, the new design of Cracker Barrel, and they're not really going to think anything of it because that's the association that they're forming. And so obviously it depends on when you first went to Cracker Barrel, what you're used to, what associations you have with the food, with the people, and with the store and the restaurant itself. And that impacts how you perceive this change. And the reason why I'm so fascinated with this topic is because a while back I came across a Twitter post, and I can't find it, but it was basically pointing out all of these different fast food restaurants that have changed over time. And so it was talking about places like McDonald's, how it had a very distinct look, the yellow arches, the playground, the Ronald McDonald everywhere, and now it's like a more kind of like, not industrial, but a more modern looking building where it could just be any building. The only way you know it's McDonald's is because it has the logo, but everything else is just gray. It's very still looking. The same thing with Wendy's. I did see a post where it was talking about the sunroom, I guess, in Wendy's, and I really haven't noticed that they took that out, but when I go back and see pictures of what it used to look like, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. I didn't realize that it changed. And so there's gradual changes over time that you don't notice as much, and then there's just so many changes at once to where you can't help but notice how different it looks now when you have people making changes in this way. And then the other restaurants I saw were Taco Bell. I didn't really go to Taco Bell, so whatever. And then the other one was Pizza Hut. So Pizza Hut was very interesting because I remember the red cups at Pizza Hut, and I don't know if any other restaurants had those red cups, but I definitely associate those red cups with Pizza Hut. And then this is really weird because Pizza Hut is a pizza place, but when I was younger, I think in the late 90s, I always got spaghetti when I went to Pizza Hut, and I don't think they sell spaghetti anymore at Pizza Hut, but those are just my memories. And I think they even had a salad bar. Like, it was a true sit down restaurant. I believe they had like some type of bar in the middle, and then they had the red cups, they had the red booths and all of that stuff. And so whatever your first experience is of a restaurant, a place or store, whatever, that is going to shape the associations that you build with the restaurant. And so when you have changes that deviate from that, that ruins your experience and your connection to those spaces. Okay, so let's talk about the changes that Cracker Barrel has made. So based on some of the pictures that I've seen on Twitter, because again, I have not physically gone into a Cracker Barrel probably since 2012, and the changes that they made were they changed the color on the walls, they changed the tables and the booths, I believe, and the chairs. Like, the chairs are like a different design, and then also they kind of have the shoe store like arrangement of pictures and ornaments and trinkets on the wall, whereas before it was kind of like not necessarily arranged, it was just kind of like put on the wall, and that added to the aesthetic because it didn't seem too put together. It's just like when you have like a grandma who wants to add her grandkids stuff to the wall and she just puts it whatever. That's kind of the vibe that Cracker Barrel had, whereas now it looks like it's too put together and it's too tidy and too neat. Okay, so I'm looking at one picture from a tweet on Twitter, and if you look at this picture, I'll add it on the screen. So on the left-hand side of the picture with the darker walls, you can see that that's traditionally what Cracker Barrel looks like. And then on the right side of it with the white wall, what you see is that it looks how I was describing the new design for Cracker Barrel. And one thing I want to point out is that if you look at Cracker Barrel from these two different angles, you can clearly tell which one is Cracker Barrel and which one isn't. The one on the right with the white wall, that looks like it could be any restaurant. It looks like it could be any diner. And so if I were, this is a horrible example, but if I were knocked out and put in a room and I woke up and these were the two things that I saw, I would be making my associations and trying to figure out where I am based on what I see around me. And if I see these two pictures and the one on the left with the dark wall, I'm going to instantly recognize that as Cracker Barrel. But with the one on the right, I'm going to think that maybe I'm at IHOP, maybe I'm at Denny's, maybe I'm somewhere else. I'm not really going to know where I am. And what you should be thinking of when you create your brand is you want people to recognize your brand image based on physical things that are in the area. And with me talking about this, assume that there's no logo clearly stating what restaurant or establishment you're in, but it's literally just physical things in the room and how the room is designed that tells you where you are. In this first image, the one with the dark wall, you can clearly tell what restaurant you're in, where you are, and it's very easy to figure that out. And depending on whatever associations you have with that restaurant, you're either going to be calm and you're going to start thinking of positive experiences, whereas on the right, you're going to be confused. You're not going to know where you are. You're going to know that you're in a restaurant, but you're not going to know which restaurant. And so you're not going to have those associations if you've never been to that restaurant before. And so I think that speaks to how important brand image is and what your first experience is of a particular brand, because you make your associations based on what your experience is. And now I have a different image on the screen, and this is the newer design of Cracker Barrel. And when you see it from this angle, you can kind of tell that it's still Cracker Barrel. You can tell that there's a rustic design to everything. And then also you can see the people and the arrangements. And then you can see kind of out the corner of your eye, you can see like the general store. So here I can kind of still tell that I'm at Cracker Barrel, but it has enough changes that I would be confused at first if I was in a Cracker Barrel or not. And so I don't know if the changes look that bad or if they're that extreme based on this view of the updated design, but I do understand why people are upset, because if you have associations with the old design and you're used to feeling a certain energy when you walk into a space and it's completely different and you don't feel that, it can be jarring. Okay, so now let's talk about what connects people to a brand. Is it the food? Is it the location? Is it the design? Or is it the employees? And I think that it's important to know what is the driving factor of what people associate with your brand. In this sense, with Cracker Barrel, I believe that it's food and it's design. I'm not going to say the employees so much, but the employees should obviously reflect the brand and the image and the culture that the restaurant is trying to give off. So you wouldn't have somebody like a Chick-fil-A person probably wouldn't do well working at Cracker Barrel, because it's just a completely different vibe. Not that Cracker Barrel employees aren't polite or anything like that, but it's just a completely different vibe. It's a completely different customer experience. And so I think that also ties into brand identity. So now, with people being really upset about changes like this to certain restaurants, what exactly is driving these restaurants to make the change? And so from a CEO or business owner standpoint, a lot of the feedback seems to be, or a lot of the response seems to be, that they want to tap into a younger audience. They want to bring more people into these spaces. And with that being said, I think there's also the lack of understanding what makes something great, and that ties into what people's first experience is of your establishment. So if you have people who are used to this 2005 to 2025 view of Cracker Barrel, and then now you're changing it, that's a long time where people have been used to seeing a certain thing. And if you're making all of these changes at once, it can be a lot, and obviously you'll get negative feedback because you're completely changing the experience that people are used to when they come to your restaurants. And that's why I think it's important to make minor changes to restaurants, especially when you're changing your brand image, because it can be very jarring to go into a new space, not feel like you recognize anything, not feel a connection. And obviously when you go to Cracker Barrel, you're going there for the food. You wouldn't be eating there if the food wasn't that good. But for some people, they would still go there even if the food wasn't good, just because of the culture and the environment and the interactions with different people that they can have at Cracker Barrel. That's where you'll see that a lot of people go to a specific diner. Even if the food doesn't go, they go there because of the other people who go there. They go there because they form personal relationships to the people who go to the diner and also the people who work at the diner. And I want to give an example of this because this is a really silly example, but it really demonstrates how much I associate different things with a specific brand. I remember a while back I went to Chick-fil-A and I got a large Coke, and for whatever reason I didn't have a straw, but we kept extra in our car, and so I just grabbed like a McDonald straw. It was red, it was bigger, and I put that straw in the Chick-fil-A drink, and I instantly felt like something was off. And the reason why I felt like something was off is because Chick-fil-A and McDonald's have two completely different straws, and there's a psychology behind this. McDonald's has bigger straws so that you drink more of your soda and you need refills. Chick-fil-A has a clear straw and it's smaller, and it's just, I don't know how to describe it, but you just get a different experience when you're drinking out of that smaller straw. And so when I was drinking the Chick-fil-A drink with the McDonald's straw, I instantly felt like something was off, like I was doing something wrong or something wasn't quite right. And I think that a lot of people have these associations where they go into a place, they're expecting a certain thing, and when they don't get it, it throws them off. And so I can absolutely see why people are freaking out about Cracker Barrel changing. And it's not so much that people don't like change, it's just that people are okay with changes or new things until it affects their comfort level, until it affects their ability to still have those associations and those positive memories with a place. And with all of these changes happening with Cracker Barrel, I do have one question, because I did see the clip of, I think, the new CEO talking about all of the changes to Cracker Barrel and all of the good feedback that she's gotten. And she talked about how managers went to, like, they had some sort of meeting and different managers came in and there were managers asking, like, hey, when can I get a remodel? When can we have these changes to our stores and all of that stuff? And so I think it is good that employees are advocating for change, but at the same time, you don't want to have too much change to where people don't recognize your brand anymore. And then additionally, I would be curious to know why the managers specifically wanted these changes, because you can go into a space that hasn't changed in 20 years, and if that space doesn't look clean, or if it looks outdated, and if it looks like it's just turning off people rather than bringing them in, then I can see why you would want to make changes in that sense. But if you're not experiencing any of those issues, what exactly is it that is making employees want this change? And so I would be interested to learn more about why managers and employees wanted this change, because I would assume that if you are working at Cracker Barrel, that's because you buy into the culture and the vibes that they have just based off of how the store looks and all of that stuff. So why would you change it to make it into any like generic diner? So I'm curious to know why employees are requesting the change. What things are they noticing that is having an impact on the dining experience? Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, I do want to mention that while there are some restaurants making changes and making their restaurants and their locations more modern, places that already have a modern design aren't really at risk of going through this transition. However, I imagine that maybe in 20 or 30 years, some of these places like Apple, even though it's not a restaurant, it has a very distinct brand image. And I wonder if that will have to change in 20 years, 30 years or something like that, and what will be the reaction to those changes. And I also want to reiterate that I don't think that people have an issue with new things or changes. It's just how much of a change are you making? And are you making a change at the expense of associations that people have with a certain place? Are you trying to draw in new people that you do so in a way that abandons people who are loyal to your brand, to your establishment, and who frequently go to your location? So I think that if Cracker Barrel does draw a new audience, that's great. If they get new customers who are wanting to come in and try out Cracker Barrel, that is a win in the sense of this change has worked. But I also think that it alienates people who are used to a certain vibe, a certain look when they go into Cracker Barrel. And I think over time people get used to the new design. And one thing I want to point out is that I know that not every single location has to change. I think they have 660 locations from an article that I was reading. So not all of those locations have to adopt the new design. I think if you're in a more busy city, or you are in a town where there's younger people, maybe it makes sense to update your design. But if you are in a smaller town or a place that doesn't really change that much, you should actually stick to what is working and what is drawing people and what has always drew people to your restaurants, your food, and the southern down-home rustic vibes. So let me know what you think about Cracker Barrel's redesign, their logo change. Let me know all of that good stuff in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.